Hello, welcome back to the Radio Gamescast. As always, I'm your host Ryan. Today I'm joined by my lovely cohort of co-hosts, Wyatt,
Hello.
Alex, and Alex.
Hello.
Hello.
I hope we're all having a good day, because it's time to talk about some games. It's the next round of Game Pass Games Club. We've got 4 games to talk about. We played all of them for, in some cases, a lot over an hour. This is a weird month, and I think a lot of us played some of these games much longer than we usually do.
The only one.
It's
The only one
50-50 for me. I either
same.
stopped right at the hour and a half mark as soon as my contract was up, I ended, or I kept going for many, many more hours.
All right. Well, I think let's start off with the headliner, I think, for this episode, which is, for me at least, and the one that I think Wyatt enjoyed quite a lot, Monster Hunter Rise.
I thought you were going to do a bait and switch and put Farming Simulator there.
I was really tempted, but I think I don't know how much we're going to have to say about Farming Simulator.
I think I'm going to be silent for the entire discussion and just do nods like this.
I want to kick us off with Monster Hunter, because I think Monster Hunter is a thing that we actually will have a decent amount to talk about.
Oh, sure.
For reference, I have played Monster Hunter Rise a bunch. In particular, I wanted to see what people thought of this, because Wyatt has played Monster Hunter World before and kind of bounced off of it. So I was really curious to see how you thought Rise would fit up against World. And yeah, for me at least, I wound up playing it 2 ways. I started a new game to play with all of you on Game Pass because it's not crossplay. So I had that going and played about 2-3 hours on that, a little bit more than that actually, because we played a bunch. And then I also played a bunch of my Sunbreak save, which is the DLC for Rise, and got further and beat the story in that. So I went back and just finished it out from having not finished it before. And yeah, I thought it was a really good time. I'm curious what you first-timers have thought about it.
Yeah, this was kind of a huge surprise for me because I didn't just bounce off of World. I understood what it was and I understood why people liked it, but I did not enjoy myself that much at all.
I remember with World, you really hit a point where you're just like, I'm not having fun, but I see why people are.
Yeah.
It's just not gelling. And I was like, yeah, if that's the case, there's no reason to keep going. Cause
I kind of felt similarly about World.
And I think one thing I will say right off the bat is that this has a similar problem that World has, where it does not put it does not give a good first impression. I actually really hated the first hour of this game, because it is amazing how it spends so much time trying to explain the game to you and doesn't actually explain anything helpful.
Oh yeah.
Do you like walls of text? Because you're gonna get a ton of them and they're not gonna make any sense.
And then it's gonna have you play and it's not gonna make any sense because none of the walls of text were relevant.
It's also not really helpful having 2 of the main quest people or main people you interact with be twins. So,
but no,
that's the best part, Alex.
When
I'm getting confused. I don't know which one gives what.
I actively, when the game started and most of the tutorials were over, I ignored any wall of text. Anytime there was an exclamation point above a character's head, I was like, nope, I don't care, because that's going to be a ton of talking and I'm done. I just want to go hit monsters with a giant sword. That is all I wanted to.
Why they didn't make sense. You didn't read them. They don't make sense if you do read them, but both cases are true.
I read the tutorial stuff, and then after that, I didn't skip through things. I just didn't want to engage with it at all.
Yeah, I will say there's 2 types of text box, with 3 actually. There's your regular conversations, which are just flavor text, right? And that's fine. That's innocuous. There's the walls of a UI pops up on screen. It's a big black box, and then it's 2 pages of textual information that is maybe not relevant to what you're doing at all. Doesn't teach you how to play the game in any reasonable fashion. And then there's the thing that you didn't get to, because by this point you had stopped hitting any of the text boxes, which nobody blames you for, is the side quests that unlock things, which are not big text boxes. It's 1 line of text that's hey, go get this for me, and then you'll unlock a new weapon design or something to build. Those are the ones I don't think you had any of, because I saw you load up your town and you had all of their colored text boxes still on them.
I got into it after I like got a good sense of like the core loop, I kind of went back, but yeah, it does not give a very good first impression because again, it's amazing how they tell you so many different things that don't matter. And yet there's so many
or
important
won't
things
matter till
about
50 hours later. Like that's a even bigger
Yeah.
problem is they
like
tell you stuff that you just don't need to care about for a while.
no, well
It's just like
it's crazy.
front loads everything.
Yeah, because there's so many different mechanics to every type of weapon that they do such a poor job of like describing to you. If I didn't have Ryan talking to me for 2 hours about how the insect glaive worked, I wouldn't have like used it, and I wouldn't have discovered that it's my favorite weapon in the entire game.
I
Because
also really love the insect glaive and
Funny,
discovered that
both of you mentioned the insect glaive.
I want to.
For oh sorry.
Oh no. Go ahead.
For reference, I have had an absolutely god awful time with this game. And that was a surprise to me. I thought I was going to really like this after also bouncing off of World when I tried it.
I'd also say between bouncing off of World and this game, you've gotten into Souls-likes, which are often a kind of comparable genre to Monster Hunter.
Listen, with Alex, you get one or the other.
Yeah, because I mean they're boss fight based, right? They're boss fights, and it's like you take one hit, you've taken a lot of damage. Obviously, Monster Hunter is not as like punishing generally because you don't lose a ton of stuff. I mean, it's in combat, it's punishing, but it's not like meta punishing.
I was
You're not de-leveling.
Yeah, I was gonna say in I feel like in Monster, there's definitely parts that are more punishing with I forget if I feel like we talked about this, but not having a lock on, and also if it did have a lock on, it was unbound by default somewhere deep in the settings.
Yeah, so the lock on
which was
thing, I'm glad you brought that up, Alex.
Shit, crazy, really.
Because I want to talk about how the lock on works, because I do think there's a very good reason why it isn't a default Souls lock on by default, which is that for many monsters that move around a lot, the Souls lock on is super disorienting. It just doesn't work well. The reason the way that it works by default is when you lock onto a monster, you tap the left bumper and it focuses you on them. It'll swap your camera there, but it won't move your camera anymore. It'll only just lock you to the center of the monster where you focus. And that way you can control where you're attacking. The reason it's like that is because the combat is so weighty and slow that like you need to know where your character's facing so your attack goes in the right direction when you hit the button. Because like it's so important that it lines up, but it is super hard to get used to.
That's another problem that I had with the weighty and slow. Sorry if yours is more relevant.
Well, I was gonna say like another reason that there's no lock on is because hitting monsters in specific areas is actually really important, especially with tougher monsters, and like a general lock on would make that so much more difficult.
Like some people are going to want to hit the tail, some are going to want to hit the head. Sometimes you don't want to be looking at the monster because you need to run away. It's a different scenario, but I think your complaints are very valid, Alex, because that's I think why a lot of people bounce off of it is just because it works that way.
Well, that's why I bounced off of World initially because when I first played World, by the way, many years ago, 5-6 years ago or something. I didn't understand what it was, and I wasn't. It's a game that you kind of have to meet on its terms a little bit. You kind of have to like learn its rules, and that's kind of how it's also similar to a Souls-like, where it's like you can't just apply your other knowledge from other like third-person melee action games. You got to play by its own rules, and I don't think I was willing to do that for World back in the day. I guess I am now, but yeah, it's its own thing, and you gotta it's not gonna be for everyone either.
Yeah, and I think you've had what is maybe the most standard Monster Hunter experience, Wyatt, which is I think every person I've heard that gets into Monster Hunter plays the last game, bounces off of it, then tries the next one and likes it. That's like a pattern in Monster Hunters. It's a thing that repeatedly happens. Because I think it's just a combat style that you have to get your head around before going back and like trying it. Because if you go at it like a normal game, it's gonna not play well. And like I want to specify, I really really love Monster Hunter, but I also think that there are ways to improve that. Right? Like I think there's a big reason why World blew up is World started to do the things that made it a little bit more accessible to regular AAA gamers. Rise as well has moved things forward a little bit, making combat faster, making defensive options more available. It's done a good job of that, but I think like the big stopping block here is just they don't have a good tutorial for weapons.
No.
Well, there is not really a good way to learn anything. Go, Alex.
Yeah, that leans into my next thing, which is my next opinion, which is probably going to be a lot less valid, which is
hey,
in of
this
itself
is a demo
reason
show.
to say
We
it
don't
on
need
the
to be
podcast.
valid.
Yeah. So I believe on the stream, I at least tried right before and during the stream, I tried 3 weapons. I tried the regular longsword that you start with. I tried the great sword. I tried the daggers. I think it
Dual
was
blades.
Dual blades. After the stream, a week after that, I went back, tried to play a little bit more because I'm just like, there has to be one weapon that I like, and I tried the insect glaive. I definitely know that I don't know how to use it because it felt awful, and it felt worse, slower, and more sluggish
why
than
it feels like that,
sword.
Alex? You want to tell you exactly why it feels like that? So the way the insect glaive works is you need to hold the bumper in, or the trigger in, and then you press a button to send your bug out, and your bug brings back juice, all right? Your bug brings colored juice, so you've got to get your colored Kool-Aid, and then when you get the red Kool-Aid, and you drink the red Kool-Aid, you get your cool moves.
Juice.
You get your bug juice, and you get your cool moves when you get the red Kool-Aid, which comes from generally the monster's head. So you send your Kinsect out to get the red Kool-Aid, and then you call it back by pressing the trigger and bump and B at the same time. It flies back to you, and then it gives you the bug juice. And then that gives you an entirely new moveset that is super fun.
So
it lasts for like 90 seconds.
You also just gotta air juggle, or you gotta just keep yourself in the air the whole time, and that's what makes
the
insect glaive fun.
I had not. I owned Rise when it came, or I bought Rise when it came out on Switch, and I didn't really like the game that much, and I never played. I honestly played probably the amount we did here. It was not a good investment. Also because I didn't have any friends to play multiplayer with, and I find it more fun multiplayer. But part of that was I had never tried the insect glaive in that playthrough, and it was this time when I went, sure, I'll try. I want to try a different weapon. I've never really found a weapon I really clicked with. I tried that insect glaive. Oh, so for me, it's the best. It's just you bounce yourself on the enemy. It's great.
You turn into a helicopter.
It also really annoyed me that supposedly the fastest weapon in the game, the dual blades, was slower than using a colossal sword while over encumbered in Elden Ring.
I think it's not quite. I don't know that slow is the right word, but I know what you're saying. I think it's more that you're just locked in position in Monster Hunter.
Comparing melee combat in Monster Hunter and comparing it
I'm not
to
comparing
other
the combat. I'm
action
comparing the speed. Itself.
No, that's what I'm saying.
This is something I cannot get used to.
It's like you have to think about it.
Slow.
You have to think about it like this. It's like comparing a hand-to-hand fight scene in John Wick to a hand-to-hand fight in like Pacific Rim. Like Pacific Rim, all the monsters and the robots, they're like punching really slowly because it's really weighty and they're huge, and they have to like travel. Their fists have to travel a huge distance just to punch each other. It's kind of like that, where it's like you're making giant swings with giant weapons at a giant monster.
When your giant swing hits, you're gonna feel good about it because the monster is gonna like reel back and it's gonna look real cool.
That's another thing that I never experienced because I was always locked in place and I could never seem to hit anything.
And Alex, you've nailed on the problem with Monster Hunter. You've nailed on that's the reason that this game is. I hesitate to say it's niche now because World did really explode in popularity, but I think this is like exactly why people bounce off of it. And I don't think that can really change without Monster Hunter as a franchise changing, and I don't think that it needs to do that.
Which is a huge shame because with the what was the last big game show off event where we saw the trailer for Monster Hunter 6.
That was on the Game Awards, one of the Xbox shows. It was wild.
And that looked so cool, and I'm just like, oh god, that looks really cool. And there's no chance I enjoy the combat in it at all.
I do wonder. You might enjoy the bow. I think that one may be a little bit more your speed because it's a fast ranged weapon.
Or the loot.
The bonk stick.
Can we just real quick? They have a giant loot that you hit monsters with.
Excuse me, it's called the hunting horn.
The hunting horn, but you can also get it to look like a loot.
You can get it to
look like
a loot.
I'm calling it the loot. You hit monsters with it. You fucking shred it to make different like chords and like songs that have different buffs. Best part, you do an overhead swing, you hit the monster, and then you kick it to swing it back up and do another swing again.
Oh
It's
And you start
amazing.
breakdancing sometimes.
It's the coolest goddamn thing. It's one
And
of
it's
the
the
best.
support weapon, the quote-unquote support weapon.
It is one of the best
coolest.
melee animations I have ever seen. Hitting it down and then kicking it back up with your foot is just one of the coolest things I've ever
Just
seen.
because it hits again on the kick up. It's not like it hits once and then you hit it again on the kick up. It's so good.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I don't know. Monster Hunter is one of those weird cases where it just has like when it feels good, it feels so good, and when it feels bad, it feels so bad.
If you,
I
especially
think that's a very
if like,
good way to say it.
if you flub up this like crazy combo that you're trying to do and you just get smacked around, you can feel like a real loser sometimes.
Oh yeah, I was also face planted on the ground for I think near 45 to 50% of the time when we were fighting a monster together.
So I will say that's another thing is I actually think fighting in multiplayer is sometimes harder than fighting in single player because
I agree.
the monster is not predictable in multiplayer. When you're fighting single player or with your buddies, generally you can predict what the monster's doing because you know where it's looking. Like you know if it's coming at you, it's gonna do attacks at you that you can react to and counter. In multiplayer, it'll just swap targets, especially when there's like 4 of you, 4 dogs running around that can hit any one of them, and so the monster might just turn at a random angle and then hit like 4 people at once. Like
It
you
can
can
get
get
a
to the point
little-
where that's not a problem, but it is starting the game out. It's very difficult to get a handle on that.
It can get also very visually noisy and busy in
Yes,
multiplayer.
yeah.
To a
Yeah.
point where like you can't read like attack patterns. You have no idea what's going on, especially early on when you're still trying to figure out move sets from various monsters. Like it's like telegraphs can get completely lost in the shuffle sometimes, and that can make it really annoying because then it feels like the game just isn't being fair when it is trying to show you these things, but it's being lost in the clutter of like 6 dogs and like 3 other human beings that are flying around with their own weapons and loots and shit.
Yeah, I think especially because a lot of the Palamute attacks are very visually noisy at the start. They have like big whip chains and stuff they throw around. And it's just like it's hard to tell exactly what's going on when all of that's happening at once. Especially because I don't know if you guys realize this, but certain attacks can knock your party members over. So like if you hit each other, you can knock each other over.
God.
It's not everything, but it's like the heavy hitting attacks. If you hit someone with like a gun lance explosion or with a greatsword swing, you're gonna knock them over. It's gonna be hard to deal with at first because you can get stuff later on that negates that from happening. But when you're, I think this is another part of the thing is that like combat feels the worst at the start because you're playing an ungeared character with no skills. And once you start to get more skills, things will feel way different. Of like a gun lance feels really clunky at the start. Then you get blast dash and you can launch yourself across the map like an airplane. Like you rocket yourself out of a howitzer at the end, and suddenly it's a very quick weapon. And you get like multiple shells that you can then load on top of that, and your explosions do more damage. And it's just really you like escalate as you're going on, and the monsters escalate with you, but like, it feels way different to play at a high level than at a just starting out point.
And for me, the 1-2 combo of someone who would get into this is 2 things. One, when the combat finally like clicks in your brain and you understand the like rhythm of it, and you're like, oh, okay, gotcha. And then they hit you with the armor sets.
Oh yeah.
That was the moment where I was like, okay, I think I'm in love. Like I finally got the combat. I'm in the right mindset for it. And then the armor sets. And the customization. And then I was like, okay, this game's got me. It's got me by the balls.
Yeah, I'll say that's especially, I think, one of Rise's strengths, because World, I think there was a lot of criticism thrown at World that, especially a lot of the base game armor and weapons were not super creative. They went to, like, they basically were all this weird metal and ore aesthetic and tried to be a little bit more grounded in how they looked. And it doesn't look bad, but it looks, I think, less visually interesting than most of the Rise sets and the Rise weapon designs. And yeah, I'm really glad for Rise they went with more out there designs, and you have like a mecha design and whatnot. So
Oh, there's also a Western cowboy look where you have like knives that look like
Ooh.
revolvers. You have
Yep.
a giant
Ooh.
hat. Oh my God, or like you have an entire set that basically makes you look like a Knight's Dragoon from from Final Fantasy.
Who'd you have to
Oh,
kill to
yeah.
get that?
Oh God, I don't even remember off the top of my head, but
That
just
might have
so
been.
many.
I think it was Acnasom, Swordbird, probably.
Oh yeah, for sure. Just so much fun.
Yeah, and these are the early game armor sets. The late game ones look super good. They're very cool. You get ones that turn your character into a mech and stuff like that. It's wild.
The other reason,
Um,
and this was a reason I got into Rise and not World, I think, and maybe this gets better with World, but the verticality is what is like the other thing that kind of sold me. Like
Yeah, I really like
having
that.
Yes.
having the grappling hook and just the amount of like climbing and flying around, especially if you're using insect glaive and stuff like climbing onto monsters and bashing them into each other. Like that was the other like, oh, you can like get up to the same height as these monsters. You're not just like running around it at
Yeah, and I'll specify
normal height.
World did in the DLC add a thing called the Clutch Claw, which is basically the sort of precursor to Silk Bugs, where you like latch onto the monster and basically hook shot onto them. And then you can do some crazy stuff with that, of like you can slam them into walls and whatnot, and get more chances to fight.
But like
It's
That makes me wanna play
adding a
Dragon's
hook
Dogma
shot,
more, where I can grapple onto a monster.
Hell yeah!
adding a hook shot into this, I think was like that was the last piece of the puzzle where I was like, oh, I could like climb on these things. It feels
Everything's
almost
better with a grappling hook.
It
I
also,
mean, it
to
almost
me,
feels like Dragon's Dogma, like a little bit closer to Dragon's Dogma in a way.
yeah, I also just think it's a fun. Well, it makes moving around the map and shit more fun.
Absolutely.
Also,
I
the
think
dog
Silk
does
Bugs
that really
are.
well.
It's going to be really interesting to see how in Wilds they adapt that, because Silk Bugs themselves are probably not coming back because it's like a regional gimmick to the area of the game. But I'm sure they might add switch skills or something back, which is the way that you can modify skills. I don't know if anyone actually hit this, but it's where you can change
Or
out
just a
some
full on
abilities.
or just a full on grappling hook. Like
Yeah, I would
just
say that's
call it a
entirely
goddamn grappling
possible. I think they actually,
Yeah.
I want to say if you
I
analyze the Wilds trailer, they have a clutch claw on them. So
I
I think
was
the
gonna
World
say,
stuff is coming
I was
back.
thinking that I saw at least a hint of that in the trailer, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think they have the bracer thing that is in World. I'd have to go double check to see if that is actually true, and I'm not just spewing nonsense that I dreamed of. Yeah, I believe it looked like it, so I'd say it's a safe assumption. The other interesting thing we saw with Wilds is that there was a second weapon set on your mount that was moving around, so it looked like there might be
Oh,
the
yeah.
ability to switch weapons at your mount or something.
I think that
That
sounds like
would
it could
be
be really cool.
sick.
Yeah, because especially in certain situations of like there's some monsters where it's just hard to fight them in melee. So having the option to have like a bow or something nearby if you wanted to swap out would be useful. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm excited to see where Wilds takes things. I do want to say I think Rise does a good job of getting you to the game faster than World does, especially if you want to play multiplayer. Because I think World, part of the problem is that you just can't really do multiplayer in a way that's easy. Whereas as soon as you start playing Rise, you have all the multiplayer stuff unlocked once you do the tutorial. You can go do the entire like gathering hub, which is all the multiplayer, or people will play it solo too, but it's the part where you can connect freely and like hunt, and there's no story really connecting anything. Just sort of go hunt the monster, and it lets you do that immediately rather than waiting. So
Oh, and before I forget, it also has an entire tower defense mode, which was a
Yes, it has
complete shock to
rampages.
me. They're not that good, but they are a lot of fun.
They're very goofy and
I don't
silly.
think I ever got that far.
Because they're part of the village storyline, not the Gathering Hub one. So you have to get pretty far in the village thing. I think Gathering Hub does have a couple eventually, but yeah, it's a wacky game mode where you put down turrets and you can man turrets and have allies called in and stuff. The DLC had some fun stuff too. Of the DLC has follower quests, so you can now take out your companions to go with you, and you can pick like 2 of them and have a hunting party with AI. And they're pretty good. They're not. You feel
I didn't
their
notice.
presence.
Is the DLC included on Game Pass?
Not on Game Pass, no.
Oh.
Sunbreak is. I think you have to buy it. I think it is discounted on Game Pass. If you
Probably
do, but,
most things are.
yeah. All right. Overall, what was everyone's thoughts coming away from Monster Hunter? Is this
Hated it.
pretty positive?
Hated it.
Aside
Bad
from
game.
Alex having a terrible time and thinking it's the worst game
Yeah.
ever made.
I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I got another chance to play it because like I said, I picked it up on Switch when it came out, and I just never really got into it. So
This would
I'm
be
glad that I learned to enjoy it. Kind of.
This would be a good game to have portably, but I cannot imagine playing this game at any less than
I
60 frames.
I-
I
It
really
feels
can't.
so good at
Don't
60.
I don't think I will ever play the Switch version again. In fact, I may have already sold it. I'm not sure about that.
I don't know if I hate it. I'm close to, but it's definitely not for me.
That's okay, Alex. No one blames you.
All right.
I think this
That's all right.
of all games is one that we can understand. Very subjective in terms of if you're gonna like it or not.
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess we didn't talk about the graphics at all, which is interesting because I think this is a game that got kind of lambasted when it came to PC just because of the graphics not being amazing. Because it's a Switch game.
I think it's an
also
art style over.
It's also
over-
stylized, which
That's the thing. I think it's more of an
Yeah.
art style over technical, like.
I kind of like it
prowess
more
situation.
than World, which is technically better looking.
So I think the
but, like,
designs are all more appealing. The only gripe
That's
I
what
have
I
is I
think.
don't like the Shrine Forest map. I think that map is very muddy and gray, despite being a
well,
forest
muddy
map.
and gray is
but-
how World work looks all the time.
But like
I
the
don't hate
volcano map in
World,
Rise
but-
is really good. The temple map is really fun. It's all green and lush. Yeah, there's a lot of other stuff I love in Rise, but the Shrine Forest map is not my favorite. Yeah, I think
Which
that's,
sucks because it's the starting area.
it is the starting area that you do almost everything in for a while. We did get to see the Frozen map a good bit though, because some of the starter ones in the Frozen one.
Yeah, I think I saw the volcano map.
I saw the like the frozen map, and I think I also was in the desert map a couple of times, or like the Rocky Mountain map.
Yeah,
couple
the one where
times.
you fight Barioth and stuff. Or Baroth, not Barioth. That's an ice thing. All right, that's the Monster Hunter impressions. I'm gonna subject you all to a different game now that you all are gonna have to play. But I think we'll have a good time. I think we're gonna enjoy this one. So I'm gonna make everyone play Against the Storm, which is a roguelike city
alright.
builder.
we're going with the tactics
interesting.
one.
I'm
We're
sure.
going with the tactics one. It's not really tactics. It's not that difficult. But this is a game I played a lot of in early access way back when it came out, like 2 years ago or something. But it's finally fully out, and I haven't played it in ages, so I want to go back and see what the 1.0 is and actually get a chance to play it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, we need to jump in to one of the two
I
smaller
was gonna say,
games next.
one of the first things that was mentioned was. Oh wait, yeah, no, never mind. We're saving that one for last. That
that's the
segue
last
doesn't
one. We're going to
fit.
end on a big
Yeah,
note.
never mind.
We got to end on the powerful
I was gonna say
ones.
you mentioned guns and monsters. Well, I'm just like, well,
Oh, we'll get there.
yeah.
Wyatt,
Let's
you
do
seem
Loot
ready.
River. Yeah, let's do Loot River. Loot River is a top-down roguelike, or I guess technically roguelite with a very interesting kind of moving platform mechanic where you control. You're on a giant river. There's tons of differently shaped platforms, and if you're using controller, you use the right stick to move these platforms around in an almost like Tetris puzzle-esque kind of way, which you can use to either traverse through the environment. You can try and move things around to your advantage during combat, or you can do what I did, where if there's a bunch of enemies on one platform, I'd move the platform over, wait until one guy gets on mine, and then move away, and then attack it, and then go back again. It's got this really interesting pixel art style that I thought was quite nice and quite pleasant. I thought it was neat. I liked it.
Did anyone else? I didn't get stuck on the very first screen, but I thought it was one of those sliding block puzzles where I had to move the like giant platform that tent and campfire was on down through the thing instead of just taking any of the blocks and moving onto that platform, then moving onto that platform, then moving onto that platform. I didn't even attempt to move the ones in the more narrow, but I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna rearrange these. I need to get
I
that
love
middle
that
platform
means
out.
that you went and stood on the small platforms and moved them to move them out of the way. But when I still need to go back and move the big one.
Yeah. I'm just like, I for some reason, I gotta
I mean,
get this big one with my campfire on it, close to it, and then I finally managed to open it up, like, completely, and I try to move it, and it doesn't move. I'm just like, oh. And I attempt to just, like, go back onto them, and it's like, oh, these can just move. And that's how I spent my first 13 minutes of the game.
Nice. I will say there are some of those big platforms you could move, because out of curiosity I did the same thing later on a different large platform, and it does move.
I feel like this game is definitely a lot better on controller,
Yeah.
because I played it on mouse and keyboard and it felt awful.
I played
gave
it on
it a
controller.
shot on mouse and keyboard and was like, nope, I gotta play with a controller for this.
Okay, so I have a question. I have a combat related question. It's top down. You can dodge. You can block. There's also a parry. There's
You can block?
I'm getting to that. There's a light attack and a heavy attack that changes depending on the weapon you're using. Did anyone else here? I guess Alex didn't even realize there was one. Did anyone else here think that the block and the parry was kind of useless? And I say that because so many attacks have so many effects to them that I couldn't tell if I was blocking properly or parrying, and I couldn't see what was happening.
I'd say yes to that because I was on mouse and keyboard and I couldn't get the timing down because there was a lot of weird, like, bad wires crossing into my head.
I think I pulled
whenever
the
I
parry
wanted to
off
move
a
my
single
character,
time.
I'd move the
Yeah.
move the raft. And whenever I wanted to move the raft, I'd move my character consistently.
Yeah, I don't think I ever got a successful parry. Maybe one. I gotta be honest though, I just didn't like the combat very much.
If I did get a parry off, then there wasn't any, like, actual visual tell that it happened.
I just gave up on blocking and parrying entirely, and I just relied on dodge.
Yeah, me too.
Despite that, I still enjoyed the combat. I think a lot of the weapons have really good feedback to it. I don't know if anyone used the Traveler's Sword at all. It's like the kind of like scimitar looking. That was my favorite weapon in the game.
Think so?
The way that you're like, it's like a horizontal attack, and then you kind of spin around and do another one into the next combo. It felt really good. It looked really cool. I liked being able to hit like multiple enemies at the same time because it's almost like a complete semicircle. Once I kind of got used to it, I actually enjoyed the combat quite a bit. It's a lot like slower and chunkier than I was kind of expecting. But I think despite the fact that the block and the parry was just completely useless to me, I actually still really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
I definitely can see how you would like that, and I don't think it's necessarily that bad. I kind of as a whole, this one just wasn't for me. And I think a lot of that came down to the combat.
Yeah, I think for me, the combat, because it basically has all the trappings of a traditional Souls-styled combat loop, and controls are largely the same, too. I think there was a few things that I wasn't a huge fan of, and I think a lot of it just comes down to the art style they chose and the ability to tell when you're getting hit or hitting something. Because I think the animations are really good. I think the actual, like, combat controls are fine. It was just really difficult to tell, like, when actual hitboxes were happening and when they weren't. And there were some enemies that I just didn't know how to deal with. Like, there's the poison guys that when you hit them go into poison. I don't know how you're supposed to deal with that with certain weapons if you don't have a longer range thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have the spear, you just kind of have to get lucky. Like,
yeah, that was the thing.
Is
like it felt like I had to hit them once, dodge, then go back in, hit them once, dodge, back.
They were not
and
very fun to fight.
Again.
Yeah,
they were not very fun. There's so many of them, and it's just like I think that particular enemy soured me a little bit on the combat loop, just because I think there's no real counter to that at that point where you have nothing that you've been given to really deal with that situation.
The spear allows you to hit it from far away enough where the poison doesn't actually hit you, but you're not always going to have the spear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem. I think the most interesting thing about this game is the Tetris mechanics and like the sliding block idea. And I don't think they use it super well. That was kind of my take on it after a while, because I played up until the first real boss, like big real boss that had like an arena and everything, and that's where I stopped, because that boss I just had no idea what I was supposed to do.
Yeah, I couldn't get too far in the game. I ended up dying a lot during the hour and a half. Is there anything later on in the game where like moving the platforms comes in as a type of battle mechanic besides like what you said with, baiting one on and then like taking them away from the group, like
I
where you
found
can
one
smash a
spot.
platform into
I
others and
found
there's like
one
some type of
spot where they
shaking
give you a
effect, or-
platform with spikes on it, and you could slam it into things. I did not find that again. And
There is a really interesting mechanic that I only saw once, but I want to be able to use it more in the future. If platforms are set on fire, the entire platform is on fire. And if you connect it to others, it
it
spreads.
spreads.
Yep.
So I was like, that sounds really cool.
When I saw
But it only
that
happened
was
once.
a moment for me. I thought that was super cool. I don't know what triggered it. I don't know how it started. I don't know if it works on
I think
anything.
it's a trap. I think it's
like,
a trap.
I don't know if it works on anything that isn't the wooden platforms. If you go into the later areas, they have stone platforms. So I don't know if it would work on those. Maybe it does, and I just didn't get to try it. That was the coolest moment for me. Is that happened, and so I tried to move that and slam it into platforms where it would be useful. But at the point that it happened, it was the easiest section of the game, so it didn't really do anything. I'll also say all the sliding block puzzle areas that I found typically only had like one solution, and it was go right, down, left, and then up again. It was that same like loop in every puzzle that I found. So what I wound up doing... Go ahead, Alex.
I was just gonna say, I almost wonder how much is sort of a flaw in the randomized design of these levels.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's stuff that I just never encountered.
That's my thing. I think
RNG
this idea would have been better being more of a proper like Metroidvania styled game rather than a roguelike.
Or just a top-down Souls-like, or like a top-down like Zelda-esque.
I mean, virtually, we're asking for a Metroidvania, right? Where you move between areas and move on and have puzzles. Exactly. I think that's really what we had wanted, because the random stuff here didn't really work for me. And the upgrade system is basically straight out of Dead Cells, which works fine. I had nothing against that. The weapons you can unlock seem very cool, but there just wasn't a lot here for why I would play this over any of those other games in that genre. I think like having the Tetris mechanics and the platform sliding is the reason, but they didn't do anything interesting in the first like hour with that. That would
because it had to be randomized. So they can't
so
really
what I wound
create
up doing,
puzzles.
I killed a mini boss that dropped a thing that was like, you can have the city be less spread out, and it will instead be like a linear path. So I used that, and that made it so I got those puzzles less that were like weird and just the same thing in random directions. Because the other thing is I went in the wrong direction one time and just had to work my way back through the whole thing. And that was not super fun. Of just because all the enemies were dead, there was nothing to do. I was just going backwards because I had gone down a wrong end. And that didn't feel great just for how long it took. I think if it was like I took a wrong turn and then have to come back and it took 10 minutes, that's too much for a roguelike.
Have any of you guys played... shoot, I can't remember the name now. Played it in like early access, and then again when it came out.
One thing,
Wizard of Legend.
Yeah, I played a ton of Wizard of Legend.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
This game reminded me of that a lot, but obviously the movement mechanics are not in Wizard of Legend.
I think Wizard of Legend has a much more solid combat loop of like,
and I think that's where it was for me. I was like, I just rather play something with more of a combat loop. What makes this game unique is that movement mechanic, but there's not enough uniqueness in the movement mechanic from what I was seeing. And I mean, that's kind of just what you're saying is like, what makes this game unique isn't there that much.
Yeah, and it could be that it comes in later. I think that's the big thing.
Maybe.
And I was tempted to keep playing, but then I hit the first boss, which I'm curious if anyone else got to the boss in the cathedral.
Not quite.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I would get very close to finishing the second area, and then I couldn't quite do it.
Yeah, so I managed to do it once, and I managed to do it with like all my potions intact and everything, luckily. So I got to this boss like fully geared up, and it's on a platform that's tall and covered by poison, so you can't get onto the platform to fight it. And it like throws its arm down in front of you, and I didn't find any point where I could attack it. Like, I don't know if I was just doing it wrong or what. At one point, I tried going into the poison and being like, do I just have to take the poison damage over time and then attack it there? And that worked. But then it's just too much damage. Like, there's no way to heal through that. So I had to go back out, and then it just grabbed the platform and killed me on it. I'm like, okay, I don't. Unlike, I think, because it's a roguelike loop, then I was confronted with I'd have to go through the entire prior 2 floors to get back there, and I didn't want to do that. I was like, I don't want to work through
Ryan,
2 floors back to try that and not understand what's going on again.
Ryan,
Could have just missed it.
I was in chat with you the whole time, and you can probably attest that I bounced off of it pretty hard and was like, this just isn't for me.
Yeah. I don't think it's like the greatest thing I ever played, but I was definitely engaged enough for the amount of time that I played it.
I kind of want to be clear that I don't think the game was that bad. It just wasn't my thing.
I will say, I think this is kind of a small thing. I think calling it Loot River was kind of a mistake. Because you don't get that much loot
Not a ton of loot
on the river.
Yeah,
I kind of get the river idea, but it's also less of a river and more of just a flooded area.
I'm fine with calling it a river. I like that. I also just think the name Loot River, because the game is very somber. It's got that kind of like soulsy kind of dour tone to it, and I think just calling it
opens
Loot
with
River,
the like equivalent of the level up character slitting your throat. Like that's a tone to start your game with.
Yeah. And I feel like the name Loot River doesn't really match with the kind of tone that it's going for. Loot River feels very like,
it feels gamey.
Almost like over the gamey. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. One thing I did like, small little thing that I did like, I like the idea of like the town center, and you're bringing people back to the town center, and they're unlocking different things for you. I always love that when a game has that in there. Always love it. I love the idea that you sacrifice some of your potions to the alchemist guy right before going out, and when you go to the next room, because you get to go back to the town in between the different like areas, he doubles your potions, which I think is really cool. So
that's how that works.
I really like that idea.
I was trying to figure out how that worked. I was literally not able to engage with that mechanic because I couldn't make it past the first room.
Yeah, but no, it's really cool. Like if you give him, because you start with 4 potions, if you give him 2, then he'll basically give you 4 potions when you go into the next room. And there's an interesting again, it's a lot of neat little ideas that I think kept my interest, because because you can then give him more potions before you go on to the next room. So it's like how well do you think you can do on each floor? I thought that was really fascinating and a fun little mechanic.
I think there's a lot of good ideas here, especially because I think the tile puzzling is really fun. It just isn't present enough as like a game thing.
Yeah.
They just need set level, like a set level instead of randomly generated, and I think they've got
I think
like
just
a
the
winning
roguelike
formula.
stuff here isn't really adding anything to it. I think the game itself is solid, but it's got this layer of you have to repeat the same stuff over and over that makes it less fun to do.
I think if you have it as like you said, a Metroidvania, like a Zelda-like type situation, but you have this interesting tile traversal, I think you've got a winning formula there for something that's really unique and something that kind of stands apart from other Zelda-likes. But I mean, the roguelike stuff that's in there is like fine. It just doesn't really fit with their central mechanic all that well, unfortunately.
Do any of you guys happen to know when this game came out?
I want to say 2 years ago.
It's really annoying on Game Pass because it tells you when the game came out on Game Pass, but not when the game originally comes out. It's super annoying.
I was curious too. I was like, if this is pretty new, I wouldn't be surprised if like we saw some improvements with that system in updates.
It came out.
Funny you mentioned that. I was looking up what
May
people
3rd,
thought about this.
2022.
I was looking up general discussions about this game, right? When this game first came out, they the studio made a couple of like Steam community posts where they were basically apologizing for the state of the game at launch, because we're like, hey, we messed up. We're going to be making some major changes. Which I was like, oh no, like what was it like before?
Yeah, and I am curious because I played on the regular difficulty. I wonder if I would have had a better time playing on the easier one. Just because I think that might make this a little bit more enjoyable, because it adds iframes to a lot of stuff, and I think that was maybe what made the combat feel clunky, is just the lack of that. So
yeah,
I might go back to this and try it on that setting just to see if I can figure out what was going on with that boss, and like actually get further in.
Yeah.
So one of the things that made the combat click for me, and this is a thing that I think they let you do on the easy mode with any weapon, is being able to dodge out of attacks. I think that's a feature in easy mode. I wasn't playing that, but I got a weapon that had that as a trait, where like I could cancel the attacks by dodging, and that made it feel way smoother to play. So I wonder if it would just be more fun on that easy mode.
Yeah.
I do want to say I love the art style. Outside of the fact that it's a little hard to read sometimes, it looks gorgeous.
Yes.
The lighting
Looks
is really
gorgeous.
good.
What stood out to me, the lighting is great. What stood out to me is the ripples in the water as you're moving the tiles. It looked beautiful. It really feels like they had 3D models that they kind of like overlay. I don't even know how like it works, but
And I imagine
it
they're
was
using
so
some kind of
smooth.
like particle simulation or something. Like it reminds me, the water looks like, I don't know if anyone ever played those like Flash games that were like dust particle simulators.
Yep.
Oh, hell
those
yeah.
were my favorite.
Oh, it's sending me back.
Yeah. Which, I mean, yeah, I think this game has something really special at the core of it, but I think the roguelike stuff just let me down a little bit.
I do wonder in the design process for this, what came first? The desire to do a roguelike or this like sliding tile mechanic?
I have to imagine
'Cause,
the
like-
tile thing came first because it's so fun.
Oh, see?
It's such a
See,
cool
I was
idea.
thinking it had to be the roguelike, because why else would they make it a roguelike?
Yeah, I think take this, make it like a designed area, designed levels, areas and stuff, and I think you got something.
Especially because I
And
think
you
this is
do
not a
get-
game that needs to be 30 hours long, right? Like, I think this mechanic, you can get a really rock solid, like, 5 to 10 hour Zelda-like, basically. And I think you've got a really cool game there. But
I think there's segments where it does have a really nice, interesting level design, but it's not consistent enough.
especially because they don't link to anything. Like, those levels are part of a
Yeah,
random
exactly.
system.
They
And I
needed to-
love
they
random
needed to
systems
deal-
in games, but they don't always line up great. Like, I think Dead Cells is like the best example of a roguelike doing actual like puzzle challenges inside of random levels, but
They really need to do more with like having different hazards on platforms, and maybe that happens in the later areas.
I
But
definitely
feel like,
saw that starting to happen in the second area. I
See, they
saw
need
it
to
again,
introduce
like,
it
once in
way
the
earlier.
third, but
I think they need to introduce it way earlier.
I also only
though.
saw it twice. I saw it with the fire, and I saw it with the spike trap I found one time.
Well, that's what I'm saying about the randomness of it. It might just be random chance, and
We could
so
have just
you're
gotten
getting
lucky.
10 boring rooms in a row and then one cool one.
Also, I don't know if this happened to any of you. Was anyone like fighting on a platform and then you get caught right at the edge of the platform and you couldn't move up or down, you couldn't dodge out of it, and you would just get hit and die? Maybe
Never
that's just a
happened to
Wyatt
me.
Tech curse thing, but like
I think
I'd
that
get
happened
caught.
to me once, if I'm understanding what you're saying.
Yeah,
I
you
do
would
think
get
some of the
caught on the edge
platforms
of a
have
platform.
like rubble on them that you can't move through, so you have to move around it. But it was hard to tell like what parts of that were actually things I could not move through.
Yeah, I kind of I get what you guys are saying about the art style. I had some readability issues personally.
Yeah.
Well, that's my thing. I
absolutely.
do think there are readability issues with it, but I think it looks great. It just is.
Well, again,
not
I
so
think
memorable.
because it's such a zoomed out top-down perspective and there's so many particle effects going on, I just didn't use the block or the parry at all because I was like, I can't time anything properly because I can't see what's happening.
Yeah, and I think it said like if you upgrade one of your stats or something, it gets easier to parry. But I literally like there was so little time for me to see the parry icon and then parry. I would like
Yep.
realize it was time to parry as I was taking the damage.
This actually reminds me of Wo Long, a game that I was playing while we were hanging around in chat a few days ago. When that game came out, the demo before pre-release, and this was like an actual beta demo, it was like 2 months before the game came out, they had a ton of feedback that was like, this is super fun. I can't beat any of the enemies because the parry has such a restrictive timing, and the whole game is based around the parry. Like, you can't do the cool moves without parrying because it plays like Sekiro, basically. And the timing was so tight that it was just like impossible to pull anything off. And so they changed it, and it feels much better now playing the full version. But yeah, this feels like a similar scenario where it was just it's hard to move forward when you can't get the timing right to begin with because you just don't know what you're doing wrong.
Which is disappointing because I think they absolutely nailed other parts of the combat. Like I said, that Traveler Sword feels amazing.
And again, maybe we just
everything
need to
has
try
so
easy
much
mode.
weight.
Like maybe that's the
Yeah.
solution here. When we're just spouting nonsense, which is entirely possible.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts on Loot River?
Wasn't
Try it out?
terrible.
Not a lot
Yeah.
of loot. Kind of a river.
A lot of
Game
river.
Pass is no reason not to try it. It's a cool,
Yeah.
novel idea, but maybe
Yeah,
it'll
I
gel
think
with
that-
you better than it did for some of us.
Yeah,
I don't think it's terrible.
Personally, it's not really my kind of game, but I could see that if it was somebody's kind of game, that there's probably a lot to enjoy there.
Yeah, especially if you like slower paced roguelikes. I think you might have a fun time in that case. I'm just too used to the zoom of games like Hades and other things that you just move really quickly. All right. You seem
Yeah,
ready,
so no, I'm ready. So kind of mixed reception on Loot River. I fully expect my next pick to have a very similar outcome, but I want to
Oh.
give it a try anyway.
I'm so ready.
We are playing Recore.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm down.
I'm
That was
pretty
the
interested.
Xbox One launch game, right?
Was it a launch game?
I have no
I
idea.
think so. It was-
I
it
know
was-
think
of
it came
this
out
game.
close to launch.
I know
feel like it was
Recore 'cause
advertised
locked
as
to
a
the
tech
Windows Store.
demo.
It was
was-
locked to
well,
the
it was
Windows Store on
advertised.
PC for
Yeah,
ages.
well, it was advertised as a Keiji Inafune game. That was like the selling point, basically. But
I
yeah,
remember it had
we got
really
this-
interesting visual style, and I don't think I remember another thing about it.
I feel like I just heard nothing
to
about
it,
Recore.
yeah, it
Just
was
actually
like
nothing.
middling. The reception was like middling or nothing. I remember playing this years ago. I don't know what I played it on or if I paid for it or whatever, but I just remember playing it years ago and I don't remember a single thing about it. So let's give it a try.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I mean,
Alex, the time has come for you
yeah,
to tell
talk
us
about
why
middling.
you chose this game.
Can I just take a nap throughout this entire discussion? That's all
did
I
you,
have
Alex?
to say.
Why
I
did
just
you?
take a nap.
I chose this game first off because I kind of like it, and more than that, because my dad loves it.
Okay.
And it's not my favorite simulator game, but I do find it kind of relaxing and like to play it once in a while. But I can definitely see how maybe some of you guys, perhaps, I don't know why, would have thought it was boring as all get out, or clunky, or bad.
See, I don't.
Do you want to say the
don't
title of the
think-
game?
Oh yeah. It's
Oh, yeah.
Farming Simulator 22.
See, here's the. I don't think it is. I think it's clunky on purpose because it's a simulator, and there is a lot of controls and mechanics to a lot of farming equipment. I wouldn't call it. I guess boring is a word for it. The words that I would describe would be the code personification of monotony.
I think
That's
also
fair.
just
I
overwhelmed.
find it.
I felt like
Yeah,
I
that
needed
too.
a flight
Kind of
simulator with no
meditative.
understanding of what I was
Oh,
getting
God.
into.
Oh yeah.
Did anyone do
Ryan, you
the-
said specifically too that your first thing you put it on the medium difficulty.
Well, yeah, because I
which
play a
doesn't
lot of
give you any
simulator games. I
tutorials.
play a lot of tactics games. So when it said choose this if you're familiar with this type of game, I was like, okay, I'm familiar with this type of game.
Oh
And
no,
so I picked the
Ryan,
middle
you
No,
option.
it means
misunderstood.
did you play the last game?
And
Basically,
Yeah.
there's no tutorial if you do that. There is no way to access a tutorial. The only way I found out there was a tutorial is I wandered around doing nothing for a little while, just looking around in first person, and then over sitting in a corner is a little question mark. And I wander over to the question mark and I try to interact with it because I'm like, this probably means I can do something here. And then I eventually stumble upon hitting a certain key on the keyboard brings up a help menu. And it's like, it tells me if I want to play the tutorial to start a new game on easy.
yeah. I
Oh.
actually really think too one of
Oh.
this game's biggest flaws is its menus. There's just like way too many of them.
It's also the controls are bizarre. There's like
But I think the
buttons you
controls are
press
very.
that don't
The
make any
controls I
sense.
feel
It comes
are
down
very.
to let's do a button over here, and then we'll do it over here, and then we'll
See, that-
like random button
that's-
over here.
That's the thing. I think the controls are very simulation based, because it's like kind of like booting up a flight simulator for the first time. There is a giant dashboard of controls if you ever see the cockpit of a plane or things like that in front of you. So it makes sense. Oh, I'm gonna be pressing buttons here, here, here.
And there's also
Flipping
zero
switches.
rush to doing anything in the game. So, it's like, okay, well, we'll drive
But
here.
what made it
okay,
even
start
worse,
the tractor.
Alex, is I went and did the tutorial. The tutorial at one point, it's like the second thing you do, it tells you to get in a tractor and hook the seed making machine onto the back of your tractor. I don't understand farming. You do the crop dusting, and I equip that onto my tractor and I start going and I lower it down so it's going in the ground. It's doing the thing where the field changes color, so I'm like, I'm doing it right. But the tutorial won't advance. And I learned later the reason the tutorial doesn't advance is because you have to attach a weight to the front as well that the tutorial does not tell you.
I mowed that entire field because I thought that's what the tutorial wanted me to do, and then I was like, "What is happening? Why is nothing happening?
What's going on?"
All right. Well,
also the default mouse sensitivity is dog shit. Oh my god,
yeah.
It takes it's so long to turn around.
Here's something weird too: is I feel like playing this game on keyboard and mouse. There's times where I was like, "Ugh, this feels like it's designed for like controller or something." There's something about this feels a little weird. You play it on controller, you have the same thing where you're like, "Ugh, this feels like it's designed for keyboard and mouse." So it's kind of just weird and clunky.
Which is like, I want to make sure that people know there are good simulator controls. Go play Hard Space Shipbreaker. Go play House Flipper. Power Washing Simulator. They all have good controls.
Well, here's the other thing: is I don't want to like. I like this game enough. My dad really likes it. People really like this game so much so that like there are farming simulator competitions they have.
No, that's the thing. Like that's the thing we have to stress. I think this is a game that absolutely works for that crowd. I think anyone
what has
outside
happened, Alex, is you did the equivalent of telling us all to play Flight Simulator, which I have contemplated doing many times. But I know that this is exactly what will happen, is none of us know enough about planes or farming to be able to play a game like this at any reasonable level.
I'm sure
this is great for people that do know how this works, and I bet my grandfather would love this game.
Well,
I played a good bit of this game, or actually, I have Farming Simulator 19, not 22, but 19 in college with some. Boy, I can't even remember who was on it. But anyway, it was like free on Epic Games or something, and this was probably, was this during the pandemic? This would have been right before the pandemic, so never mind. Ignore that. I was trying to come up with an excuse for why we were that bored. But like there was just like a whole bunch of us on one server, and I'd like come back and somebody had like mowed an entire field and like chopped down every tree in sight or something. Or like there'd just be a truck parked in the middle of a field that was growing.
So here's the thing. We do have to talk about my favorite part of the game. That opening cutscene was the most hilarious fucking thing I've ever seen.
It's like one. What are those phrases?
It was a beer commercial. After it was a beer commercial without the beer in it. It was amazing.
Yeah, so this game, I wonder how much this game is made by, I think, a German developer? Maybe Swiss. I want to say German.
It
was just like one farmer saying after another that was meant to be marketed to someone.
Oh, there's
you get up early. Yeah, you get up early and do the work that others don't want to do, but that's what makes you tougher than the rest. It's so
on it. Hard days pay for a hard day's work.
No, dude, I was laughing. I was full belly laughing. It is the funniest shit.
It sounded like the kind of voice that would tell you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Oh yeah. Well, the developer's Swiss, so part of me wonders like how much of this is just them being like, yeah, here's a
this
American
sounds like a fun
farmer
American
thing.
Word. Yeah. 100. It absolutely gives off like the American nonsense saying on Japanese T-shirt vibe.
Yeah, and then let's get a guy to give like his best like this is the guy who like would do like the Dodge Ram ads or something.
That's the power
Ram.
of the new Ford F-150.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it fits. I think they chose the
Dude,
right.
That was
Built
the best
tough.
part of the game, and it was really the surprising thing is that it was actually really well produced. Like in terms of
I thought it was
the-
live
the-
action until I'm just
the
like, wait a second.
fidelity was actually
is
really
3D.
high, and then it
It's-
smash cuts into the actual game, and you're like,
Which is
Oh.
quite low. Yeah.
I
I'm just like,
actually think
I'm in
compared
Google
to
Street View.
other simulators, I do think this has a decent amount of production value comparatively.
sure,
Because a lot of like the indie sims are pretty crazy right now because they're
Mhm.
booming. Because every niche interest will buy a simulator, right? If you're into building trucks or something, you'll have a simulator and you'll be like, hey, it'd be great to build trucks where I don't have to spend thousands of dollars on components and like I can just mess around. And I think that's very fair as to why these games exist. Like train simulators have done well for ages. Flight simulators, like they're all very popular. It's just they're popular with a very niche audience. And the way these games make money is they have, I don't know if you guys looked at the DLC list.
Billions
Oh my
and billions
God.
of
Oh, yeah.
deals. You can buy
So
you can
much.
you could buy all the farm equipment in the game in real life for the
I
cost
forgot,
of the
if I
DLC.
look this up on
It's-
Steam, I can see exactly how much all the DLC costs. And
It's
I'm
it's
so-
wild to
tens
me
of
too.
thousands. I know
because-
for like a train simulator, there are tens of thousands of dollars of DLC in
Well,
one
train-
or
game.
like
I
trucking
think-
simulators, yeah.
Train
Honestly, okay,
simulators.
not that bad for Farming Simulator. Only $200 for all the DLC. That's far less than I was expecting.
Hey, you're
Well,
still paying more for Destiny at the end of the day.
It's
Oh,
wild to me that there is that much DLC because there's already so many things in the game. So like to add more is kind of mechanically like gameplay mechanically is kind of redundant.
Well, I think it's because you
But-
want the truck that you have actually wanted, right?
exactly,
You
I
want the tractor that
think-
you actually
Yeah.
want.
I think it's like, okay, here's the DLC where we're putting in, we got this brand deal and now we can like recreate this type of tractor or this
Yeah,
type
it's,
of
it's like the same thing
implement.
as Forza car packs, where it's like you want the
Yeah.
brand that is the brand you would actually want to drive.
It's like The Sims. You're not expected to buy every single DLC pack for The Sims. Just cherry pick the stuff that
Yes,
you want.
pick the stuff you want. Hey, Wyatt, speaking of The Sims, you want to guess how much the DLC for all The Sims 4 costs?
Okay, can I guess a number
Let's
and then we'll
do
do
it
like
in,
a hotter,
let's do it in
like
ratio
upper or
of Farming
lower?
Simulators. How many Farming Simulator 2022 DLC lists is The Sims
I'm gonna
4
say
DLC?
It's worth 3 of them.
7 or 8 farming simulators.
Was it
worth.
Alex is closer. It's worth 4 Farming Simulator 2022 full DLC list to get all the Sims DLC right now, and that's with most of it on a 50% discount. It looks like. So I don't know.
Oh,
God.
so I was
So
closer
you
to
were
the
actually
actual
close if it was on
price.
full price,
Okay,
but both of you were
okay.
on the money. And yeah, I think it's just to illustrate that's why these games are like this. These are often games that people will play as the only game they play, which I think just makes them bad for our format. Like it means we're playing
yeah.
a game that's super deep. It has very intimidating controls
Look,
for an hour.
I didn't get to make a punishment this year because I didn't
So you chose this.
This was
yeah,
your
exactly.
method
So
of
I
revenge.
I had to sneak one in.
Well
actually.
played, sir.
I was
well
a little
played.
jealous a couple weeks back, so I had to sneak this in. No, honestly, it was just because my dad loves the game so much, and I saw it was on Game Pass, and I thought, oh, that'd be funny to make you all play that.
Yeah, I do think.
Was it
I
funny,
think I would
Alex?
be more into
Was it
this
funny?
if there was like, because I played the whole tutorial and then it was just like, hey, go do, and I was like,
Yeah.
do what?
So, yeah, for a little bit more perspective too, I played the previous game, and this one, though, like a lot of the base is similar, almost everything has significantly more polish to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this one specifically is kind of a turning point in the series. I think that their previous one was successful enough that this is like their first really big one.
They had budget behind Farming Simulator.
Yeah, I think it had more
2022.
budget, even though they've made a good number of these. I think 19 was like hit it off pretty big, and also it was free on Epic once, so I bet it got a big player base with that. And so I think this one was the first one they went into with a much bigger budget and player base.
Yeah, I
and
mean, it's
also
still
my-
it's not a full price game. It's $30 and it's on Game Pass. Like,
Yeah.
if this sounds like your deal, it probably will be your deal. I think is the way I put this. If it doesn't sound like your deal, it probably won't be.
There
So I'll
was
say
a
this.
time where my partner was getting up at 5 a.m. to play Farming Simulator.
So I'll say this.
Oh god.
As someone who grew up on a farm, I can see a lot of the similar things that I grew up with represented in the game in a way that I'm so sorry, Dad, that would make those activities more fun.
Yeah.
It streamlines them in a way where it's like, oh, you're getting the like feeling of being a farmer without all of the stupid bullshit that I know comes with it that I've
Without the
seen
getting up at 5 in
firsthand.
the morning, having to put on your work
Yeah.
gloves and go
Perfect example.
pull yourself
right?
up by your bootstraps.
Perfect example. At least with the equipment that I grew up with. If you want to attach something to the back of your tractor, you had to get off your ass and actually do it and like lift the fucking
Yeah.
thing on the back
You
of
gotta
the tractor
jack
and
the
get this
trailer
weird.
and, like,
Yeah, you got to get this like weird key in there to make sure it.
it makes a
You see-
terrifying sound too when a trailer like that locks into place. It sounds like a gunshot. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So
Oh,
they
it is a
they
first-person
they have
shooter.
taken
God.
they have taken
Into the
the
field.
the farming life and streamlined it in a way where it still feels like you're simulating it without a lot of the like bullshit. So
None of the tedium.
exactly. Well, tedium's relative
okay.
depending on
I was
the
gonna say,
person who's
I
playing it.
described this game as the height of monotony. I don't know what you're talking about. No tedium.
But I think it did a really good job of that from my admittedly somewhat limited experience.
how fun. I wish House Flipper was on Game Pass so I can make you play House Flipper. I'd be so
My
curious
My
what the
partner
difference.
also been playing a lot of that, and
I think House Flipper actually
washing
has good
simulator.
tutorials, so I think it would be a little bit more immediately enjoyable, but we would still see. I don't know if the reaction would be the same or not. Yeah,
all right.
I don't know.
Well,
These games are interesting to me.
yeah, I think time's come for me to pick another one, and this one is much more of a video game, and something that I think we can all get some good enjoyment out of in an hour or so. I'm gonna pick Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Shredder's Revenge.
Oh hell yeah!
Absolutely. I was gonna pick this the month this came out, but that was the week I think we added you the first time, so I was like, I'm not gonna pick a thing this time. So you make sure you pick one.
I've been thinking about picking it for a while. I have played a bit of this game, but only single player, and honestly, it's not that fun single player. So, I mean, the
Yeah.
gameplay is good, but it's definitely meant to be played with more people. So,
I don't think there's any online multiplayer though.
is there not?
I don't think so.
Insane if
I think
that's
it's
true.
local. I think it's local only.
Oh.
It has 8-player multiplayer. When am I ever getting 8 people all with controllers?
all with controllers at the same time. Yeah.
It's a
All
nice
right.
look that
feature
up.
though.
But either way,
Hmm.
it's my pick.
Let's hop on to the other headliner. We don't have Brett
Speaking
here to
of
explain
turrets and
why he did
monsters.
this to us. I'm acting like we
Aw.
didn't enjoy this. It was a fine time. We played Palworld. It was, I think, it was a time. I think we all had a moment.
I'm a big fan of when character creators let you create a monster of a being, just a homunculus of a person. I
yeah, I
chose
should've-
some character and minimized like the waist and the head and the chest things, and then maximized the arms and the legs.
And I
They look like a Roblox character.
and I created a Karen, which is almost worse.
Nope.
I made a guy that was blue.
Hey,
My,
you know, sometimes you gotta go for the blue.
My thighs were so wide, my hands
So-
were permanently in my pockets.
Are we gonna talk about the controversy at all, or are we just gonna talk
I think
about
we
the
talked
mean-
about this a bunch when we streamed it.
It was proven incorrect. The guy who started the rumor said that he made it up.
Yeah,
Well,
they
it's a bit of a
scaled the models and stuff.
multifaceted. It's a bit of a multifaceted.
So, for a brief
That's the thing.
overview for what we're getting into right now, Palworld came out. People were like, it stole Pokemon models. The person that claimed that on Twitter and started this whole wildfire has since said all the evidence they showed was basically them falsifying it to some degree.
Yeah.
None of us fully followed this. We don't take our word on this.
Me,
Go
when I
look at it
purposefully
yourself.
spread misinformation on the internet.
But the gist comes down to a lot of the designs in Palworld are Pokemon ripoffs, even if they're not AI generated or actual duplicates.
It's
lot
a
of the designs
parody
are
of
original.
Pokemon. It's supposed to be.
That was the weird thing to me, is that people were claiming that a lot of the models were like AI generated because they're so close to the actual thing. And it's like, you don't need an AI generator to rip off Pokemon
In
designs.
fact, I would say
People
you would have a
ripping
hard
stuff
time
off forever.
getting an AI
Humans
generator
can
to
just
do
do that. Humans can just do that. Like, we don't need AI to rip off Pokemon.
Just use
models.
Photoshop. Like, you can do it yourself. You don't need an AI.
Yeah.
You probably don't even need to know anything about art to attempt that.
Well, and one thing that we pointed out during the stream multiple times was that yes, there are some pals that look very close to like a Pokemon equivalent, right? Like there was one, I forget what it's called, but it looks like a
Is
purple
Vixie-
Meowth, basically.
Vixie is the Eevee ripoff. Kativa is the Meowth thing.
The weird thing is that there are a lot of original designs.
I would
that
say the
look
original
really
designs are
good.
legitimately really good. Yeah.
So it's
Depresso is my favorite.
Depresso is great.
So it does raise this question, though. It's like if you're
Depresso is
actually
slacking.
good at making your own original pals, why make some that are like very obviously close to its original
What I have to
source
wonder
begin with?
is if Palworld started off as like a joke game and then they realized it was good and actually made it a real game.
Yeah,
Like,
I
I have to
kinda
wonder if that's legitimately what
feeling that it's
happened.
Also, kind of just like a parody of Pokemon in many ways.
It is.
So, like,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's-
Parody law is a thing for a reason.
It takes the very creepy, the very like messed up undertones of Pokemon that like we've just all grown to accept over the years and puts it right in your face. Like there's nothing subtle about it.
Yeah. And I mean,
also
it's fun to
really
play.
like it though because
Yeah.
it gives a lot more of a point to catching so many Pokemon and everything.
Yeah, the fact that they
Excuse me,
have like
pals.
they serve to automate your base because you'll get pals that have like different keyword traits and stuff, and they can do like ones that can do fire can cook for you, and ones that can spew water will water your plants and stuff like that. And I think it just makes a really good loop for a survival game to have that stuff.
Yeah.
Of, like it mimics the kind of Conan Exiles Thrall thing in a way that isn't quite so
Yeah.
overtly dark
Yeah,
and wild.
That one's the even darker one. I like that game, but that's weird and dark too.
Yeah, especially because you
Um,
can treat your pals quite nicely in this game. You don't have to be mean.
Yeah.
But you can launch a penguin out of a rocket launcher.
You can, if you choose to do so, but that's on you. You got to live with the moral impact of having chosen that. The game didn't make you do it.
I gotta say, for me personally, this is not a bad game. I'm not claiming that it's a bad game. For me, it is very much a survival game in like every
Yes.
way. And that
I really like survival games. So.
No. And so that's gonna depend on whether you're into survival
Mhm.
games or not, obviously. There's so many ways to streamline a survival game, and all of the ones that I've liked have streamlined it in really efficient and really interesting ways. And this is one of those where it doesn't really do a lot of that. And so I run into this wall really early on. Like the two examples that come to mind in terms of survival games that I've really liked is Valheim and Enshrouded. Those kind of streamline a lot of the small survival game eccentricities
Especially the
in a
meters.
way
You
that
don't need to
makes
pay
it,
attention to as many meters in those games.
yeah, and it just it makes them a lot more palatable to maybe people who aren't super into it. And Palworld is not that. I do think the addition of the pals is interesting and can automate a lot of the things at your base and can make things easier. But it's just like, and maybe playing Enshrouded first was part of the problem, but it was like going from Enshrouded where you just go to a crafting table and then it repairs all your weapons for you instantly without using any
wonderful.
materials, and then going to this where you have to build a whole separate thing just to just to like repair your stuff. You got to
You
get different
can't place
resources
down
and stuff.
stuff on the ground properly if you have a floor. There was a Ryan. You encountered something
Yep.
with building stairs
Yeah,
that was
so there's a
weird.
weird thing where if you build a staircase, you can't then put walls on the staircase sides without deleting the staircase, putting the wall down, then putting another staircase down. But I mean, it's also, this game is super early access. It's in beta. It plays, I would say, surprisingly well for what people were thinking this game was going to be. I feel like most people thought this was just going to be a joke when it came out, but it's actually a solid Ark competitor, and I would say I had much more fun than I had playing Ark playing this game.
Yeah, I would much rather play this.
Even
over
the
Ark.
state it's
Probably
in right
runs
now.
better than Ark too.
Yeah, runs okay. I would say it looks pretty good comparatively. I mean, it looks very default Unreal, but that's fine. Like
I did have an issue with the aesthetic, and I brought this up during the stream as well.
Yeah.
But I think character models look good, the pals look good. They really clash with the environment. Like
I think they should have
they
just
feel
stolen
like they're from-
Craftopia's because I mean they made Craftopia too. I think the art style of that game might have fit
I
a little
think-
better, but
it's just they really clash, and because so much of the game is about the environment and interacting with it, it was really like distracting for me. Because again, like the character models and the pals all looked good, and then you just have these very default, standard looking, like almost photoreal environments, and it clashes in a really ugly way
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, I don't think I really realized that until you said it, but yeah, I do definitely notice that.
yeah, I think this is actually a really solid baseline for a game, and I think this probably will end up being very, very good, and eventually, assuming they stick with it. And I think if you spent the money on this now, you wouldn't be disappointed, if you know what you're getting in for. But like, there's no main story from what there is. It's basically you're gonna go collect the 100 something pals there are, and that's gonna be your game for now. They need to add more actual content. I think.
You can catch humans with a pow ball as well.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I had fun with this. I am excited to go back to it in a year, I think. I don't think I'm going to keep playing this in the interim just because it feels so bare bones in certain areas. Like, I need the building to be better specifically. Like, I think I need the building system to be fleshed out a little more before I hop back in, just so I can build the bases that I actually want to build. Because like for me, that's why Valheim works so well. Is Valheim's building system is I think the best in any survival game that's come out. And Shrouded is very close, but Valheim is just a very unique and fun building system.
Yeah, Conan Exiles is a little clunky, but it's got a pretty good building system as well.
Yeah, I think it's just I need the Palworld needs to be at the level of Conan Exiles for me to really get into it.
Which I think it's close.
It's close.
I think it
yeah.
will be there pretty soon.
I think for me, and I know for a lot of people, a survival game needs to streamline certain things, and it needs hooks other than just being a survival game. And outside of the pals, there isn't really much of that, at least what I experience. And it's like I need something else.
Yeah, I know
I
they
need
said they
something
want to
else
add
to,
like
like,
proper
help me.
trainer battles and stuff, so you have a reason to like train your team up. More than just like the one or two bosses that's in the base game right now. Which yeah, that seems like a good reason to come back because it seems like there actually is going to be potential for a lot of build crafting in this game, bizarrely, for your pals.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to see where they take it.
I did want to mention one thing here though, since we're talking about the Game Pass version specifically. I know we mentioned this, I think, in our video that we did of gameplay, but the Game Pass version is not the same as the Steam version. It's in sync with like the Xbox version, I believe.
Yep.
And so there's some quality of life things that just aren't, or at least when we were playing it, weren't in.
Being able to name your character, I think, is one of them.
Yeah, you couldn't
Yep.
name your character. We could only play
There
with
was a
4
limit.
people, which we learned.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't set up a server for 16, like you can on the Steam version. And I'll note that Alex and I both bought the Steam version in addition to this, because we had a lot of fun with it.
I literally, as we speak, have a server that I've set up running too. Like, I've been playing it with friends, and it's been fun. Also, speaking of which, if you have a server up and you get your pals to start working on something, they just keep working forever while the server is up.
You get to rest, but they do not.
Yeah, I mean, if you have it going so that like you really don't, because like if it's pretty easy to get it going where like they work on their own food, they then take the food to where they can feed themselves, they sleep, they it can be pretty self-sustaining, and then you can just come in the next day and be like, "Wow, I have 1,000 wood."
All right. Any other Palworld thoughts? I think we've said a lot. They have dungeons.
Oh yeah, we kept on calling them like Pokemon and Mon and things like that because
I'm a
we're
fan
just
of
too
calling
used
them
to
pals. Come on.
pals. Come on.
That's a mouthful.
It truly is just
Palkamon.
as
Palkamon.
horrific as the game itself. Yeah, I mean it's quality. I think Palworld has surprised people with how good it is compared to what everyone thought it was going to be. Is just a joke. Hey, it's just January. We started off the year very strong, so hopefully 2024 is shaping up good for games because 2023 is hard to follow up. But
Yeah.
already some strong things coming out. Hey, any last thoughts on Palworld?
Gotta catch a ball.
Gotta catch them all. All right.
Whoa, don't say that too much. Nintendo's gonna hear.
And you have to capture the majority and then put them to work in a factory.
So
In a loving factory.
normally we only pick 4 games on this show, but I know Brett, and I know there is a game that just came out on Game Pass that he very much wants us to play. So I'm going to add it to the list. We may not talk about it next episode, but I'm adding it to the list so everyone has it ready to go. Persona 3 Reload is out on Game Pass right now, and I know Brett would lynch us if we did not add this to the pile.
Oh.
So, we're adding it to the list for the next go around. And that's us. That's the Game Pass episode. We got no negative opinions aside from Farming Sim, but not actually negative. It's more just we're just not Farming Sim fans.
Or indifference.
Yeah. No real stinkers this time. So good picks, everyone. I'm excited to see what this next batch of games brings. It's time for shoutouts. Who's got something?
This is probably going to be a dual shout out. Shout out to Helldivers 2. That game is awesome. It's so much
I was
fun.
just taking a look at that earlier, and it looks awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo that. Helldivers 2 has absorbed my free time like the homunculus gremlin that it is. It's really good.
You
Oh,
have
God.
to listen. You have to spread democracy one bullet at a time.
God. That sounds surprisingly accurate out of context, actually.
No, it's really fun. It's got some weird bugs on PC, I should mention. And I also wouldn't really recommend playing without a friend, at least one friend. But it's really fun. It's really chaotic. It's very dumb. It's very silly. And it's fantastic. Fascism's never been so fun before.
Manage democracy, Wyatt. Get your
I'm
terminology
sorry,
right.
of course. Of course.
I don't want to report you to the authority.
To the Super Earth authorities.
Okay, Alex, what you got?
I just tried this new drink, a Calypso.
What?
That's it.
We'll be back next week.
Possessed by a British lad.
We've been passing around a funny meme on the Discord, and I found the drink that it features on at the grocery store, so I figured I'd try it. And I don't know if I can say how they describe it in the video, but it's like that. It's like that.
How good? All right, Alex, you got something?
Yeah, I mean, shout out to I'm behind the times here, but Elden Ring is really good, guys. I don't know if anybody knew that. This little indie
Elden
game.
Ring? I've never heard of
this,
it before.
This little indie game. I don't know.
Welcome to the club, Alex.
I bought it a while back and played it. I beat the first couple of bosses, and kind of just fell out of playing it, and I just restarted playing it as like a mage, and I'm super into it. It's great. Imagine that. It's almost like it deserved winning all those awards.
Very cool. All right, mine is for a little known game called Tekken 8, which I don't think I've mentioned on the show yet, but Tekken 8, very good. We haven't had an episode where we're just talking about stuff since it came out, so I have not spoken about it, but it's already contender for Fighting Game of the Year. super strong,
fighting
best Tekken
Is
in a
there
long
anything
time.
else coming out to dethrone them?
I will say
We
it's-
usually get fighting games in the second half of the year. So.
I will say it's very lucky that it's a fighting game that's coming out after a year in which we get both a new Street Fighter and a new Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, Mortal
Yeah, well,
Kombat
the
probably
new
wouldn't
Mortal
have been a
Kombat's-
discussion for best.
I was gonna
Oh,
say Mortal Kombat's like already dying because of
Oh no.
people
What's-
just mostly monetization and
It's
content.
really egregious. It's not a bad
I'm
game,
wondering-
but the monetization
I
is
don't-
real rough.
I don't want to start rumors here in the shoutouts, but I'm almost wondering if like WB is putting pressure on some of these studios to
Oh,
monetize.
I don't know.
super
Neversoft's
heavily
had
because of
pretty egregious monetization in every fighting game they put out, so I'm not that surprised.
but they're also
True,
all but they're also all published by WB.
True.
That's all I'll
Yeah.
say. All I'll say.
All right. Well, on that happy note, as always, Tuesdays it'll pop up on your feed somewhere, someplace, at any time. Rule the show. You have a good afternoon, morning, or evening, wherever you are.
And remember, we live in your walls.
Not lying.
do.
And listen, at the end of the day, you just
It's
gotta
night.
sit down and just have a nice cup of liver tea.